Hello and welcome to the Australia-Indonesia Centre and this discussion about a career in science, technology, engineering and mathematics, or STEM. I'm Helen Fletcher-Kennedy and I'm the COO of the Australia-Indonesia Centre, and I'd like to begin by acknowledging the traditional owners, the people of the Kulin Nation, on which this centre's Melbourne office is located and where the modern city of Melbourne is located, and from where we're hosting today's webinar. I'd also like to acknowledge the Noongar people and the Ngunnawal people, the traditional owners of the land where two of our panellists are joining from today, and I pay my respects to their elders past, present and future. The Australia-Indonesia Centre is presenting this as part of Monash University's Indonesia Talks series. The topic we've chosen also relates to the Centre's commitment to supporting and promoting women in the fields of science research, technology and mathematics, because the world will become smarter, faster only when we draw upon the diverse talents of the whole population. The chat function is on, so please ask questions. And now I'm going to introduce our 5 panellists for today. Valerina Daniel is our first panellist. Welcome, Valerina. Valerina Daniel is a journalist and news anchor at Berita Satu, an environmental activist and a children's book author. She also serves as advisor to the Minister of Tourism and the Minister of Environment. Our second panellist is Prerana Mehta. Prerana Mehta currently serves as Chief of Ecosystem Development at AustCyber, as well as being the ACT Chair of the Australia-Indonesia Business Council, AIBC. Welcome, Prerana. Our third panellist is Professor Anu Rammohan. Anu is an Australia-Indonesia Centre Senior Fellow, and she is Professor of Economics and Associate Dean International for the Faculty of Arts, Business Law and Education at the University of Western Australia. Welcome, Anu.
Thank you.
Our fourth panellist is Dr. Hasnawati Saleh, or Nana. Nana is a founding member of the Indonesian Young Academy of Sciences, and she also served as Study Director for the Indonesian Academy of Sciences. Nana is currently the Research Coordinator for the Partnership for Australia-Indonesia Research. Hi, Nana. Welcome.
Hi. Selamat pagi. Good morning.
Pagi. And finally, our fifth panellist is Helen Brown. Helen is a former ABC journalist and Indonesia correspondent. She was the Centre's inaugural Fellow for Digital Economy, and she's also the founder of Business Asia Startup. Welcome, Helen.
Hello.
So now we're going to go to our questions, and my first question is going to be to Prerana. Prerana, your field is cybersecurity. The proportion of women is around 11 or 12%. How difficult is it to convince young women to study and to work in this field?
Hi everyone, thank you Helen for the question. It's really great to be here. Yeah, look, 11 or 12% isn't a great stat, that's for sure. Thankfully, that's actually a global stat, so it's not that we're doing particularly bad here in Australia. It's just not an area that a lot of women have actually entered into, and we're doing whatever we can to be able to bring women into mathematics, engineering, and data sciences to be able to join cybersecurity. So in Australia, you're right, it's about 11 or 12%. That's been increasing, I think, little by little over the last few years. And certainly, I think over the last 12 months, we've seen a greater understanding and recognition of cybersecurity. And that's certainly brought in a little bit more interest from girls in school. And certainly, we've seen a lot more females enrolling in universities as well, which is fantastic. The other thing that the universities are doing is that they're actually trying to make cybersecurity part of the core curricula across multiple faculties. So you don't have to be doing engineering or science to do cybersecurity, you can actually just be doing a business or an arts degree and also do a couple of subjects in cybersecurity. And that's fantastic, because what we're hoping is that then kind of provides that little bit of an incentive and interest for girls to join STEM and join cyber. Look, I'm going to talk just a little bit about the background of cyber and why it's traditionally been male dominated. So cybersecurity, about 20 years ago or so cyber's not new, but when it was around 20 years ago, it was actually quite a defense-oriented field. And that's why it's been quite heavily male dominated. But what's been recognized now is that cybersecurity is about problem solving. And to solve problems, you actually need diversity, and you need women to be able to come to the table with both technical, so those zeros and ones and data kind of skills that you really need, as well as non-technical skills. So you actually need business skills to be able to communicate with corporates and government about what some of those issues are and how cybersecurity might be able to solve them. So really what we're seeing is, I guess, greater opportunity for women to join cybersecurity, not just in technical areas, but also in the non-technical areas. I hope that's answered your question, Helen.
Great, thank you, Prerana. Yeah, excellent, and quite interesting developments for young women in the area. So now I'd like to go to you, Nana, and ask you, what are some of the challenges in your pursuit of becoming a scientist that you've faced?
Thank you, Helen. Very interesting question. I guess I did my undergraduate in Indonesia and moved to Australia for postgraduate studies. And I was a young mother then. I had a baby. I just delivered a baby, and I have to commence my study in Australia. I have to leave my baby with my parents-in-law, and they joined me 4 months later. My husband came with a baby, 8 months old. So what I'm trying to say is, for women to pursue, especially those mothers who pursue career outside home, you need an immediate support from your partner and also your family. And I was working as a research student in a lab, and that often require demanding time, like I have to work odd hours or odd time. And having a baby certainly is another challenge. So I have to acknowledge the support from the university, who granted my request to rent a flat near our lab, so I just can travel easily between home and the lab. And the second challenge that I face is actually when I transition from Australia back to Indonesia, having spent 10 years in Australia studying and working a very well set up lab, international standard, and moving to a less developed where the research infrastructure is actually less developed. So that's another challenge, and to face those challenges, you need support from your immediate surroundings, not only males, but also females, and your men. And it's great to have mentor in this to face those kind of barriers. Helen.
Thank you, Nana. Thank you. Wow, quite a juggling act that you've pulled off there with a young baby and a PhD in biomedicine. So well done. I'll go to you now, Anu, and just wondering if you want to add to that as someone that is working in a male-dominated field also. What 2 or 3 pieces of advice would you give to young women looking to enter that kind of a field now?
Thank you, Helen, and morning, everyone. So I guess the first thing I would say is that women need to be self-confident and a little bit more assertive. I often find that women are filled with self-doubt, and it's observed anecdotally that when women apply for promotions, they do that when they're absolutely certain that they will get promoted, and men don't wait. They apply when they're almost ready. So what this means is that women then feel discouraged. So the first thing I want to say is that women need to grasp the opportunities that they get and take it with, and take actions to pursue that. The second one is that it's true that male-dominated fields may seem a bit off-putting for women because they don't see as many role models, female role models. So just building on what Nana just mentioned, I think it's really critical to have mentors quite early on in your career. And they don't have to be female, but it could be male or female. So it's really critical to have mentors, to be prepared to reach out to colleagues when you have difficulties, and to family, and not feel that you're in it by yourself. So I think that's really critical.
Absolutely, yes. Reach out for those support networks. I totally agree. Thank you, Anu. I have just had a question come in from one of our viewers for you, Prerana, which I'm going to put to you. I'm a young woman. I've just completed a BA at Melbourne University and I'm looking to get into the cyber field. What are the best pathways? What are the biggest challenges associated with switching to cybersecurity, given the skills required are so different from what I've just done in my arts degree? It's a good question. So
yeah, it is a great question. And so look, you can always do a double degree, right? So that's completely an option. We've actually got on our cyber website, some information about the, I guess, the different avenues available through educational institutions. And we've actually got a list of all of the universities in Australia and all of the TAFEs in Australia and the courses that they provide. So you can actually go to that and try and navigate your way through, I guess, partnering your arts degree with X degree. What you'll find is that not all of them are quite technical. So there are a number that are actually, they're not even cyber, they're actually probably computer engineering, and so they can be quite complementary to your current degree. And I guess the other thing to add is that not all of the jobs that are out there, and we use something called a NICE framework, which categorizes 52 jobs within cybersecurity. Not all of those 52 jobs are actually technical jobs. A lot of them are actually around providing leadership, providing management, and the management can be around, say, marketing and or communications, or even a lot of them are how do we unplug or understand or translate the technical elements into normal human language, so that when you are talking to, I mentioned before, businesses, government, small business, the dentist, your parents, you can actually talk to them in a way that's non-cyber speak. So I think what you'll find is that there's going to be more and more jobs available that are actually seeking non-technical cyber skills, and your background would be perfect for that.
Thank you, Prerana. That was for Eva Van Dyke, that question, who posed that question. Valerina, I'm going to go to you now and ask you, in your experience, what is the gender mix in environmental policy in Indonesia, and perhaps why is that so? We'll wait to hear what your answer is though first.
Okay, first of all, I'd like to say thank you for allowing me to join in this panel of experts. And then I'm also happy because I'm also an alumni from the Monash University in Australia, mastering in communications and media studies. Before I jump to answer your question, Helen, I would also like to maybe add a little bit of my experience during my master degrees journey in Australia. I had the same experience as Nana just told us before about, having to balance everything between being a student and also a mother. So I think I'm also supporting the professor's response to these questions about being a woman. It has to be confident, and also you also have to believe that you can do it, because if you don't have that confidence, you will never be able to achieve whatever you dream. So that's why I just want to add that. So I really appreciate the struggles and the journey that has been done by Nana and also Professor Anu and also the other women experts here in the panelists. So back to the questions. As the advisor to the Minister of Environment, I've been working with a lot of ministers in the previous cabinet. So I've been working as the environmental ambassador since the year 2005. And then I'm working with the previous ministers. For example, I'm working with the Minister of Rahmat when we, Indonesia, led the UN Climate Change Convention in Bali. And then also working with the Minister of Emma Salim, the previous minister as well, as the leaders of the delegates of Indonesia at that time. And then, during that experience, I know that there has been a different kind of approach in approaching this subject of environment between the Ministry of Environment, the one who is already in charge, the previous one, and then with the current one, because the current one is a female minister. She has served for her second term at the moment, Minister Siti Nurbaya, and I'm very excited to work with her during my assignment as the advisor to the Minister on climate change topic. I think what is different is because she's a female, so she's approaching the problem as a mother. So instead of just producing policies, but she's trying to embrace all the stakeholders using her capability as a mother, because she's also a mother and she's also a working woman. So she has this certain traits that is different compared to the previous ministers. So I think if we see the percentage of the women leaders in the environment in Indonesia, of course, it's still small compared to men or male. But I believe that if we continue this spirit of having more leaders, more ministers, or more women ministers in the cabinet, in the future, the way of the policy making will be different, because at the moment, for example, we are seeing a lot of students, a lot of young generation are incorporated in that issue, because that's the way we're trying to approach at this moment. As a mother, you have to embrace all your children. So right now, it's very happy. It's very good to see that all the youngsters are embracing the climate change issues. And then they also involve a lot with the storytellings. And then when I made the books, for example, I create a series of books of environmental issues with my daughter, because I want her to be involved as well. It helps to engage more young generations in the story, because the way my daughter tells the story, it relates with the way children's told the story to other people as well. So I'm very happy that our efforts during these times are gaining good momentum, and hopefully in the future we will have more ministers, female ministers, especially in the environmental topics.
Absolutely, wonderful. Thank you, Valerina. Some interesting insights there. And I'm going to stay on that point and go to Helen Brown now and ask you, Helen, why is it important to have women scientists' voices heard in public?
Thanks, Helen. Well, it's the amazing stories that we've already heard, I think, show how important it is to hear the stories of women and the effort that they have to go to succeed in their field, the effort they have to go to be heard, and also that, you do have to step up and out of your comfort zone at some point. You can't leave the job to someone else. If you're passionate about having a career and seeing a diversity of people in a particular industry, then part of that is that you actually have a responsibility to speak up as well. And other women really appreciate that. They really latch onto that. And I've seen that in my career as a journalist for 30 years almost. So when I started out as a young reporter, which was as a rural reporter, so in agriculture, farming and food, which is very male dominated. But I think because I grew up in that environment, I learned pretty quick to how to have a voice in it, and was supported by my parents, so that was fine. One of the things we tried to do in my team was get more women talking about farming and agriculture, because you could see they were so connected to the land and so invested in what was happening, but we never heard their voices, and they were never really much in leadership positions. So we made an effort to try and speak to women as much as possible. Early on, though, there was huge resistance. Women didn't want to do that. And the problem is, if you don't, if your voice as a woman isn't being heard, other women are going to notice that absence and think that's not the field for them. So it's just that, it's not just perception, it's what people see as the reality, and that plays out in the media. So that is why it is important to have a diversity of voices and views in the media. And if you get that opportunity, you need to take it. There have been plenty of men who get on the media and they don't have much to say, but you see the face and you hear the voice, and that gives them some credibility in some ways. So, you know, you've just got to get on there and know that you're probably not being asked to give an expert view unless the journalist thinks, hey, you do actually have something worth saying. So, you know, you're not being asked for no particular reason. They've probably done a bit of research and worked out that you do have something to say. Yes. And it's a really good opportunity to do that. And, you know, I talk about it's your responsibility. And I don't want to seem harsh and say, you know, you have to do this, but we can't complain about not being heard. Women can't complain about not being heard or seen if they don't have the courage to step up as well. And I used to get very frustrated at women who were very strong and clever, who wouldn't go, who wouldn't be recorded, who wouldn't do an interview, because I knew that the optics of that were that it's just a man's field, you know, and that carries through very strongly. So that has changed. That's definitely changed. And it's so heartening during this coronavirus pandemic to see so many female scientists featured in the media. I know that there could be more, but it is good to see that because it does encourage early career researchers and scientists, students who are wondering what path to take next. I think it does encourage them and show them that there is a role and a place for them in those fields. And, you know, I would just strongly encourage anyone, as you say, just find your voice. If it's an authentic voice, then it's going to be a good voice.
Great. Thank you, Helen. Thank you very much. I'm going to move now to a question for you, Nana, and perhaps Anu might like to comment on this one as well. What role can men play in progressing the gender equality in STEM? So, Nana, perhaps you first, and then Anu. Oh, Nana, you need to unmute.
Sorry. Yes.
Thank you. So, yes, what role can men play?
Thank you, Helen. Yes. So, Indonesia, that's a very important question to raise in this kind of discussion. So, in terms of Indonesia, we know that Indonesia has patriarchal culture where males play predominant roles in almost every aspect of life, from politics, social control of economy, control of resources, to even moral authority. So I think to make a change in leveling field, we need the support from men to overcome social cultural barriers. So we need also political support to influence policy that allowing men to thrive in STEM professionals or careers. But in practical levels, I think we need male champions to support women in STEM. And most influential ones are support from, as I said before, significant others, whether it's a partner, a family member in the family, and support from males in a working place or in the institution. There are challenges, but of course there's also some progresses. Like in Indonesia, we have just established, there's a young scientist movement in Indonesia currently, where we also have a program called Women in Science Ecosystem, where we have male champions for women in STEM to raise awareness of unconscious gender bias in the field.
Excellent, thank you. Anu, did you want to comment on that as well?
I think Nana has made some really good points. I just add to that and say that I totally agree. I think part of the reason why women are falling behind in their careers a little bit is because they put too much into the domestic sphere. They do a disproportionate amount of household chores. So having a supportive male partner is really, really critical. Because we see that the women that are falling behind in their careers are those with children. So there's not much difference between males and females who do not have children, but we see that there's a big difference there. The other thing is, yes, absolutely, we need to have male champions. If you just have women-only networks, then what we find is that it doesn't get the buy-in that we need from this sector. So I think it's really critical that we bring males into the conversation as well, and just make them aware about the unconscious bias that exists, because sometimes it turns out they don't really understand that it's happening out there.
Absolutely. Yes, I guess that's the point, isn't it? If it's unconscious, it's it needs to be brought to consciousness.
Yeah.
Thank you, Anu and Nana, for that. We have had another question from one of our viewers, which I'm going to put to you. I agree with the statement that women should have self-confidence, is the question. But on the other hand, sometimes in Javanese culture, our mothers don't want their daughters to struggle, and they're less likely to ask them to be assertive. I'm wondering if perhaps Valerina or perhaps you would like to comment on that one first?
Okay. Well, first of all, I need to explain that my background is not from Java. So my parents are from Sumatra. So maybe that's a little bit different compared to the question. But what I would like to say is, I think it's not about the culture, because I also have a friend from Java that also have a supportive parents on her to achieve her dream in STEM, for example. But from my personal experience, I would like to say that we, in Sumatra, for example, my father always told me this specific saying or message in our culture in Sumatra, from Minangkabau. It says, "Jan manjadi mantimun pungkua, kadalam indak maganakan, kalua indak magajakan." That's the local dialect or local language. It means that when you live, you have to have a value. So that's what my father told me. So even though we're women, we can have value in whatever we do in our life. It doesn't have to be in a professional life, but also in a domestic life. But back to the questions, I think it depends on the person itself in how to convince themselves or to convince the parents that they can do whatever they want in achieving their dream. So I think it goes back to our belief, and then it probably also goes back to the education level, because if you have a high literacy, high education level, you usually have that confidence. So I think the homework for our culture in Indonesia is probably to increase the level of education for women, because if they are educated enough, they will have the the resources to believe in themselves. So then in the future, they will have the courage to achieve their dreams, even though they have to face challenges from their parents, from the culture.
Thank you very much. Yes, and a great goal to generally increase the levels of education. I think Prerana may have wanted to say something about that as well. So I'll just go to you, Prerana.
Yeah, absolutely. Look, thank you, Helen. I was just reflecting on all of the commentary that we have been, I guess, discussing and the questions that have been coming out. And I think culture plays a really important part to this conversation. And I don't mean culture in terms of where are we from, because I'm from an Indian background, we've got Indonesian background, we've got mixed backgrounds. My children are Italian and Australian. But it's also the culture of that country and the culture of both the men and the women in that country. And, there's been a lot of comments around women have to kind of lean forward, but how do we do that? What if my parents don't kind of let me, my family, the society doesn't kind of allow that to happen? So how can we break those barriers? And I think, there's a role also, I think, for potentially policy to play. There's a role for communities such as the AIC to be able to play in that. And then there's roles of the sector itself to play in that. And I know, for example, from the perspective of the cybersecurity sector, it's something that we're absolutely aware of, we recognize it, but then we're stuck on, well, so how do we do the change? How do we make it happen? Do we throw money at it? Because money is not necessarily going to work. We actually need to change the mindset, and that's the harder bit. So a great program, actually there's two great programs that I know that are happening. One's actually in the UK, where a national security organisation basically said that we're going to employ 400 girls. That's it. If we're going to recruit anyone, they can only be girls or women. And that was pretty brave, and they've managed to kind of meet those targets. So certainly targets and quotas, and I know that's all very kind of political, but they set a destination and they show commitment, and I think that's what's really important. But don't let, I guess, it's not about letting culture get in the way, but it's about how we can work with culture and refine culture and be a part of that voice and change it.
Right. Yeah, great. 400 girls. Yeah. Wow. That's an amazing thing to do. Yeah. So you're saying really we need to be a little bit radical perhaps to change that we're looking for. Nana may like to make a comment about that as well.
Yeah, thank you, Helen. I think it is important self-belief, confidence, as Prof. Anu and other panelists have already talked about. So I think women has to be have an agency, like put their own success as their own responsibility. And I always believe I build my own confidence over the years. I wasn't confident in the beginning, but as experience build on, I build my own confidence, and I think that is really important that you have experience, you have mentors. I always emphasize you have mentors that actually become a partner for you to help you shape your careers. So it is important to have those kind of things to support.
Thank you, Nana. I think Anu would like to make a
sorry,
Anu, just let me remind the viewers to post their questions in the Q&A box, and then I'll go to you, Anu, to make a comment on it as well. Yeah.
Thank you. So I just wanted to say that I was actually raised in India, which is, does really poorly on any gender measure that you look at. But in India, we actually have more, like nearly 50-50 in terms of areas like STEM, women's participation. So although there's a lot of, Indian culture is also very, very much about women being submissive, but we still have really, really good female role models. And actually, Helen, it's quite surprising, but I grew up in India with a female prime minister. It was never, we never felt that being a woman would be a barrier to get to any position. So, and we see women scientists in India doing really well. So I think, I don't know, culture is important, and plays a role, but within certain cultures, we also see there is a lot of support for women working within that culture too. Yeah.
Yeah, a very, very important point. And similarly, the statistics in Indonesia show a more even participation at the education level. But then that probably brings me to the next question, which I'll direct to you too, Anu. Despite that increase at the education level in schools and at university level, we still don't see this reflected in senior academic positions, for example, within the university, or senior leadership positions within professions. Why do you think that is?
Thanks, Helen. It's a good question. And I've reflected on this quite a bit myself. I think one of the problems, or rather one of the issues we observe, is that women tend to, in academia, where you require a lot of time to be spent in labs or writing papers, women tend to spend a lot of time in teaching and service-oriented activities. And they tend to be quite perfectionists there. And then what happens is they have less time to do research. And it's been observed that anecdotally, women don't network in terms of research. They don't build networks. They don't publish as many co-authored papers as males do, which is quite surprising, because you think that women naturally are more collaborative, But because they're trying to do their research in a limited time, when you go to a conference, for instance, you see that the woman would present her paper, go back to the hotel room, whereas the males would be in the bar talking to other male colleagues and then end up writing a paper together. So I think that's one aspect. And the other one, I think, is just a pipeline issue. Because we've in the past seen very few women rising up in senior roles in STEM and male-dominated research areas, there are very few women relative to men in the senior roles. So women just feel that there's no role models for them. So I think it's a lack of role models and the fact that women tend to specialize or put more effort into things that are not observed, you know, like research publications are observed, but the time you put in service and the time you spend preparing for your teaching related activities are not observed. So yeah, so that's one of the problems.
Absolutely. Yes, yes. And that takes me to, I'm going to go to you, Helen Brown, now, sort of on the same thread, but to ask you about what can women scientists and STEM professionals do to increase their media presence, because that presumably would also help their rise within the organisation that they're in.
Yeah, absolutely. And a really interesting point, Anu. I'll pick up on that a little bit as well in my answer, because when I was growing up in rural Victoria, my father would take me along to the farmer meetings with him, or he'd take me on his business trips. And I was often the only woman at those farmer meetings, and learnt to feel comfortable in that space. So I think your point around women having to make an effort to go where there aren't so many women, perhaps even be the only one, is a really important point to make, because that is how you learn how the system works, basically, where the influence is, and how power is transferred. And if you're not in that mix, you're not going to be a part of that, those more higher profile positions that you really should aspire to. There's no reason why you shouldn't. So that was a good learning. And I guess that reminds us that we have to ensure our children have those opportunities as well to go into areas where perhaps they're not seen as being a fit so much. So, and then to pick up on that networking thing, you know, it's about making yourself available, isn't it? It's about being available. And part of the media cycle is about that. So, you know, when I started out in media, it was pretty busy. It was very full on and competitive. And that's probably been quadrupled in today's world. The resources are less, the time demands are much, much greater. The deadlines are relentless, and you don't have a lot of time to try and find people to fill the monster, as we called it, the monster of time. You've got to keep filling it with information. So journalists, what they do, and media does, is they build up lists of people, of experts that they can go to, especially if something happens quickly. You know, they'll have a contact email, a mobile phone number. They'll have a record of them as to the last time they appeared in the media on that particular platform. And they'll look at it and they'll go, right, we haven't spoken to you for 4 months. Let's give you a call and see if you've got anything to say about this issue. Now, how do you get on those lists? You've got to front up in the first place. You have to make yourself available at some point in your career to a journalist. And that way, once they get to know you, they're going to put your name in a list that a lot of people have access to within a news organisation. How do you let someone know, perhaps in your organisation or your university or wherever, that you would like to do some, be called on by the media to offer your expert opinion? Well, I guess you have to work with your communications team within your organisation or department or your university or whatever, your student group, and just say, hey, look, you know, if someone wants to comment on this specialist area, then I'm able to give that potentially. Here's my areas of interest. Here's my best contact number. You've got to be willing to be contacted out of hours as well. And, you know, just put yourself forward that way and see if the media team can help you and put you on their list of experts to contact. So I find with universities, you know, often something would come up and you would look at their expert list, their expert contact list, and you would ring one of their immediate people, and it was all very helpful. But you've got to get on there in the first place. And then you start to work out as a journalist who's got particular expertise, how they sound. You know, are they good for interviewing on TV, or are they better for radio, or are they better for print? You work all this out, but you've got to be on those lists in the first place. And I saw a woman economist on TV the other day, who I interviewed probably 15 years ago, and she was one of my go-tos, and she's still, you know, fronting up and being an expert commentator on economics. And she's really, really good at what she does, and she's a strong woman, but she's not aggressive. You know, she's just great talent, and she would have become great talent because she practiced it. You know, she went up for that first one, and then she got asked to do another one, and over the years she's just been practicing it, and is authentic and does it really well. So you've just got to start somewhere. You've got to be brave and start somewhere.
Great, thank you. Valerina, did you want to comment in your work with the ministers? I know that you've brought scientists in to provide advice on in that work. Have you had female scientists, and can you speak a little bit about that from your perspective?
Yes, thank you for the question. So yes, I serve as the advisor to the Minister of Tourism on the Sustainable Tourism Development Project in Indonesia. So one of the program is called Sustainable Tourism Observatory. We do this program together with the UNWTO, World Tourism Organizations. So this program, basically we're trying to develop an observatory to build a sustainable tourism destinations in the specific destinations. So in order to do that, we collaborate with universities. So at the moment, we have 10 prioritized destinations for tourism in Indonesia. So we have 10 different universities who are locally working, and then they have to do research on the issues of sustainable tourism. For example, at the moment, I think it's very important to incorporate a scientist because, you know, during the COVID-19 pandemic, you have to be able to, for example, keep a very safe distance. So I think it is very important to incorporate scientists, for example, in the destinations area, so then they can count based on their carrying capacity of that destination. So if they have to reduce the amount of visitors, for example, they can do it based on that scientific fact. So in our program, the Sustainable Tourism Observatory, we also do that kind of research, even though it's not the pandemic era, but we do that in order to be able to develop sustainable tourism destination in Indonesia. So in working with universities, some of the leaders of this project in the destinations are also women. I'm very happy that one of the leaders in the North Sumatran project in Danau Toba prioritized destinations. It is led by women. She's previously the head of tourism in North Sumatran government, and now she's the head of the tourism department in University of North Sumatra. And so now she's leading the research for the Sustainable Tourism Observatory in North Sumatra, specifically in Danau Toba area. So until now, there are 28 Sustainable Tourism Observatories acknowledged by the UNWTO, and 5 of them are in Indonesia. And one of the acknowledged Sustainable Tourism Observatory is the one in North Sumatra. So we're very happy that recently the World Bank also embraced this program. They help and cooperate with the universities. And the project is still ongoing until now in order to help build a better destination in North Sumatra. So I'm very excited that we are involving scientists in the tourism project, which is something that maybe not heard before, because when we introduce this concept to the general tourism stakeholders, they're like feeling that this is something new. So in the future, we already have a discussion with the other ministries, for example, the national development ministries, that we're going to build more SDOs in the future in order to, you know, develop more sustainable tourism destinations, and also encouraging more tourism departments in universities, in local universities, to increase their capability in researching in tourism, so then in the future, you know, both departments in tourism and also the education departments will, you know, will be developed better in the future. So that's, I think that's something that is very new and needs to be continued in the future.
Yeah, thank you, Valerina. And interesting for some of the young scientists listening that they might not have imagined a career in tourism, for example. So I think science can take you in all sorts of directions, and it's good to remember that. I was just going to switch across to Nana and ask you about role models. There's been a few examples of this has come up in some of the other people's comments, Nana. What role models have inspired you as a young scientist?
Well, thank you, Helen. I think having a role model and mentors are two important things to shape our careers, to help us, guiding us in the field. So when I was a teen, I was so amazed by Dr. Prativi Sudarmono. She's the first Indonesian astronaut to land in space. And that was, I was still like in secondary school, and that was really, really inspiring on how she becomes, how she show like there is no limit to what you can achieve as a woman or as a young girl. And then I also want to highlight the importance of having inspiring and engaging teachers in STEM subjects that made students interested to pursue study and professions in STEM field. And I had this in my high school years. I have very good teachers in math, in chemistry, and in biology, and that really helped me to understand the subject and become interested to pursue a career in science. And also a role of mentors. I have mentors in the university that helped me, introduce me to the field of biomedical science, of molecular biology. His name is Prof. Irawan Yusuf, and he also the one who helped me transition back to Indonesia after many years in Australia. So this kind of mentorship or network are needed to help us further our careers. And also I was mentored by Professor Sangkot in the last 5 years, who was actually a professor in Monash, but then moved back to Indonesia to advance science in Indonesia. So they are both my source of inspiration and part of support system professionally. And last but not least, I have a role model in my family. So I think having a support system in the immediate family is really important. My mother was a very tough and persistent woman. Despite she married very young age and having kids, but she managed to continue her high school and then obtain her bachelor degree, which was quite rare at her time. So to me, that's an inspiration. And she always put like education is really important for both boys and girls. So yes, having role models and mentors really helped me in shaping my career as a scientist, Helen.
Thank you, Nana. Important messages coming through about the importance of mothers, I'm hearing.
Yeah.
I actually have had a question from somebody else who's watching, Sri Wa Yuningsi, who's the founder of Girl Share Travel. And it links to what you've been talking about, Nana, so I'll go back to you with this. She says the biggest problem that I face is attitudes. Education is not perceived to be important by women in rural areas. How can we change that? And she's asked the question to both Nana and Helen as well, Helen Brown. So Nana, if you'd like to go first.
Thank you. I think that is a big challenge. Ibu Valerina just mentioned, like we need to change the mindset, and that's a long way. It's a very huge challenge for us to change the mindset. But I think there is a lot of movement now in Indonesia for to inspire young women, or also younger generations. There is so-called kelas inspirasi, kelas berbagi, and including us in the Academy of Science, Akademi Ilmuwan Muda Indonesia. We go to schools, at least go back to our school, to our high school, to inspire those students. What professionals, STEM professionals, for example, that you can have after you graduate from university. So I think it is important to engage and motivate young girls and let them know what kind of professions that are available for you, an array of options to have that you are able to have in the future. I think that's important to have. So inspiring other young girls, inspiring young generations on that in the field.
And I know you do that, Nana. I know you do that with your own nieces.
Yes.
Helen Brown, did you want to comment from the Australian perspective about rural attitudes to education?
Sure. That has changed, but 30, 40 years ago, it was very different. Young women in rural areas were really just meant to get married to a farmer and have their children and ensure that the farm continued, basically. You might get a bank job to supplement the income, or a teacher's job, but there wasn't really much expectation that you should have an actual career. So I grew up kind of on the cusp of that changing, and I didn't go to university until my mid-20s, and that was partly because I wanted to, but there wasn't a lot of support around doing that. So it is tough. It can be really tough, and you're in an environment and you know that you want to go down a particular path, but you've got a societal view that makes it very hard for you to move forward. And I think it just takes a lot of courage, basically. And if you can do that in your community, just imagine how many others are quietly wishing they could do the same, and you're showing them the path, which you don't realize at the time. So it's just a case of, it will change over time. I agree with Nana on that. It will change over time, but it takes effort by everyone who sees that as a progressive and good thing to do, to just work at it and explain the value of education, and not listen to the people who say you can't do this. Go with your heart and what you know is right for you, and just find a good, productive way forward. And good luck.
Absolutely, great. I think my own mother actually had to leave her job once she married too, so things have changed a lot, thankfully. But Prerana, I think, would like to make a comment on this question as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Look, I just wanted to share an experience that I had in Jakarta in November last year. And I was there actually doing a standards presentation, but I also had the opportunity to meet with, I guess, the peak body for information and technology. So they were an industry association with members, and I met with their board for lunch, and I was absolutely blown away, because the board comprised of a majority of women. And not only were they women, they were young women, and they were just sassy and intelligent, and they just rocked it, and they were great. And this was in November, of course. It was just when Jokowi had regained his seat, and there was a bit of a reshuffle in government. And the other thing that I was absolutely enthralled by was the discussion that was happening and the insights they were sharing about, the new ministers and whether they do a good job or not. And it was just exhilarating, because I just looked at that group of women thinking they are the future of Indonesia. And their day jobs were, of course, with Bukalapak or with Gojek, so e-commerce, highly digital organizations. It was brilliant. It was inspiring, and I know that that's just a peak, I guess, of what else exists in Indonesia, and hopefully across hopefully across a number of other countries as well.
Absolutely, yes. Thank you, Prerana. So we are coming towards the end. I do have a final question from Selvi Tangara to all of the panelists. How can we break the glass ceiling in STEM in your respective fields? So let's start with Nana.
Thank you, Helen. I think it is really important to introduce the field to the students, to when we whoever in our surroundings, as I said, array of options of careers to have in STEM. And I always emphasize on self-belief, confidence, that nothing can prevent you from achieving your dreams. If you can dream it, you can achieve it. So self-confidence, and also how we have science and education in the Young Academy to address all these kind of things. Although it's very slow, but I think there is progress, and we are aware of this. Like, we need to increase the balance for women scientists in STEM areas.
Thank you, Anu. And very briefly, so we can get through everyone. Anu, next. How can we break the glass ceiling in your respect?
Thanks, Helen. I was going to say that we have this problem in economics as well. The declining pipeline of students studying economics, it's gone down from about 50% to about 25% at the moment in Australia. So what we're doing is we're trying to go to schools and educate girls there to try and encourage them to do STEM type of subjects and economics as well. We're working with the Reserve Bank, with policymakers, educating them about exciting careers in these areas. And I think it starts there at schools, because that's where they're being conditioned to believe that they can't achieve something. Absolutely. So I think that's the way we start. Yeah.
Excellent initiative. Thank you. Prerana, how do we break the glass ceiling in your field?
Yeah, look, we're getting there. We're breaking it. I just know it. And I can tell, because a lot of the listeners today have already said, how do I kind of, do other subjects? How can I change my career? So we're absolutely getting there. I think hard work, and I think we've all said it before, leaning in, holding up your hand, wearing bright jackets, Helen, so that we're recognised. I think that's really important too. So I think that's how we're going to get there.
Excellent. Thank you. Helen Brown?
Same, really. It just means you have to have the courage to hold the course. And, you're going to be the annoying person who wants to do something different and is seen as upsetting things. And, why are you doing that? And why are you making me do the housework? And all these sorts of conversations that you're going to have, which are not comfortable. But unfortunately, it isn't the only way forward. It's not easy. I don't think any of the panelists on this webinar today, it's been heartening to hear that we've all had, struggles in the journey, but the payoff is huge. It's just such a delight. So keep at it, and know that you have our strength with you.
Absolutely. Thank you, Helen. And Valerina, 30 seconds from you.
Okay. So I would say that first we need to make the level of education, especially for women, to be higher. That's our main homework at the moment, in order to, give them resources, give them self-confidence, so then they will, be able to break through the glass ceilings. And the second one is you have to communicate STEMs or professionals or jobs in STEMs in a creative way. For example, for me, we create books, we do campaigns, we go school to school and explain them about the issues of climate change. So for others, maybe they can do different ways, but they can also, for example, ask the role models or successful women to visit their specific destinations in order to convince the young women to, be able to encourage themselves to break the glass ceiling. So I know that this is a long journey, but I believe, just like a scientist, Marie Curie said, that it's a process that needs a long journey, but we need to keep continuing it in order to achieve our objective, which is increasing the women in STEM.
Fabulous. Thank you, Valerina. And what a lovely note to finish on, a quote from Marie Curie. I'd like to thank all of the panelists. You've really provided a lot of inspiring ideas for our young aspiring scientists who are listening. We have got quite a number of other questions that have come through, so we will try and answer those directly with our listeners if we can. But I'd like to thank you, Anu, Nana, Valerina, Helen and Prerana. Thank you so much. Just before we finish, I wanted to remind everybody that we do have another event coming up next week on Thursday, the 23rd of July. It is Geopolitics in a COVID World. And we have the Shadow Minister, the Honourable Penny Wong, Foreign Affairs Shadow Minister. As part of that, we also have Professor Michael Wesley, who's the Deputy Vice-Chancellor at the University of Melbourne. And we have Dr. Phillips Vermont, who's an AIC Leaders Program alumnus and the Executive Director of the Centre for Strategic and International Studies. That conversation, that webinar next week on Thursday will be moderated by Helen Brown. So tune in for that one as well. And thank you for joining us today.